Hi everybody, welcome to our podcast, 100 Little MS, 1,000 Little MS Things. Oops, 1,000 Little MS Things. Today I've got I'm Claire Jens, my friend Claudia is here helping me. And today we're interviewing my friend Jodie Haartsen, my MS nurse in Melbourne for, I reckon, was it 7 years? I think it was 7 years.
And yeah, it would have been that time.
Yeah, and we're catching up now because we've actually not spoken for a long time since I've moved up here. So I'm curious to catch up and to see what you're doing.
Yeah. So, yes, we did meet about 7 years ago. Would be 7 or 8? No, and longer now, much longer, I think, Claire. I met you first when you just came back to Australia.
Okay, that was in 2014, end of 2014, I reckon it was. So 2014, ages ago, long time ago. So we met, and then I met you probably in hospital, I presume, Boxall Hospital.
No, I remember it really clearly, actually, because it had a very deep impact on me. So I'll tell you the story because you wouldn't remember it, but I do. We were because you were coming into outpatients clinic for the first time, and you were seeing Helmet, and I met you first, if I remember it correctly, because I don't have MS, but I still remember things wrongly. But I remember the feeling, how you remember how people made you feel. And I remember sitting in the toilet after I'd met you and just crying, just really crying, because I thought, she's such an amazing, strong, gracious, beautiful woman with this tragic story with these 3 little boys. And but it was the way that you held yourself. You held yourself, and I remember it so clearly, just the way that you held yourself with such courage and such kind of, such graciousness and courage. I really remember sitting in that toilet. I was talking to my husband about it this morning. I said, I'll never forget how I felt when I met Claire, and how that strength came across to me, and how that courage came along. You sort of you held yourself so right in your skinny jeans. And just like, and here's my story, but you weren't telling your story with a poor me thing, even though you 100%, no one deserved a more poor me at that moment than you did, but you were telling it with such, this is what's happened, and now I need to get on with it, and here's my boys. And then over the years we had many conversations, but I will never forget that. It's not, I've been an MS nurse for a long time, since 2000, and it's not many people who make me go into the toilet and have to cry.
Oh, I never knew that, Jodie. It's just a nice thing to say that, because I think that whole time my life was just so huge, and so all those things going on. It was such a hard time, and I'm kind of glad that I obviously expressed the right things, and I was just trying to survive those days. It was a hard time, so I'm glad you saw that. So thank you for your help at the same time as well. It was important. Thank you.
Yeah. It was really, as I said, it was sometimes we are in such a crisis, and often people see me as an MS nurse when they're in their biggest time of trauma and crisis, and people hold themselves really differently, and they present really different stories and really different pictures to you. And I don't think people are even necessarily aware of that's what they're projecting. But yours was so much courage in all of that. And so, now seeing what you're doing and your ongoing courage is just such a joy for me, because it's been there all along, Claire. Is that you're an woman and I saw it straight away. And as I said, I've seen in my 20, I don't know how many years now, I'm 54, so 30 odd years maybe 20, 25 years of MS nursing, I've seen a lot of people. And I think, what you're doing now is great, but also a reflection of the courage you have to face things head on.
Thank you for saying all that. I didn't realise you saw that, but thank you so much. I'm kind of stunned at what you said there, but it's so nice. Thank you, because I think it's I think the courage thing. I think that I always say to friends that I said, well, if I don't get on with this and be strong and get through this, what am I just going to sit in the corner and cry? You can't give in. You can't give in and just give up, because that doesn't help anyone. And I had 3 little boys to look after by myself, so I thought, well, I had to be strong. But I think that probably I I think probably some people don't always do that. So I'm glad that you saw that I'm doing that. So thank you for mentioning that.
Even I'm gobsmacked. That was just so beautiful, and I feel like out of like all the weeks, like you just really need to hear that today.
I do. It's a hard week. So thank you for pointing that out. So thank
Starting
you.
off with the bang.
Yeah, Jodie, thank you. So Jodie, now you were at Vauxhall Hospital then with me. This is back then. Where are you now?
So I was at Box Hill and I became a nurse practitioner. After I shipped you off to the Gold Coast with with the sadness in my heart that you were having your Tysabri up there, but clearly you had good things coming your way, so that was awesome. That was amazing. And I became a nurse practitioner and stayed there till I was 49, and then I decided that I wanted to. I decided that I had bigger things I wanted to do, and so I wanted to do, and that I realised that people came to Box Hill and got really great MS care, but there were so many people in rural and regional areas and places who just didn't get the care that they needed. The delays to diagnosis was terrible, and so there was just really significant inequality. And so, in a quest to extend myself and extend what skills I had learned, I went across to MS Plus, which was the MS Society, and I was there for 5 years. Ironically, all the way through COVID, so that was an interesting challenge. But actually, really, my heart was always in public health, I think, and so now I've come back to the Alfred, and I am covering my friend's role, who's an MS nurse, for a while, but I'm doing other stuff in innovation and improvement as well too. So sort of still in neurology. My heart will always be well, my heart will always be in the brain. That doesn't make sense, but I've always loved supporting people and caring for people with neurological conditions. So but it was fantastic for me to learn all about the programs and the supports that they have at MS Plus too. I learned a heap about the NDIS, which was great, and now can bring all that back into the Alfred. So it's been fun and interesting.
I didn't know that's good to hear that you're still present in the MS world hugely, which is great. And are you still working with Helmut? Where's Helmut now then?
Well, Helmut and I, we had the Helmut and I worked together for 21 years, so it was a long time. It was definitely, and then not long after I left Eastern Health, he came across here at to the Alfred, and so now I am back with Helmut.
Oh wow! Couldn't get away. That's good. I'm glad.
Could you explain for us who Helmut is?
Sorry, Helmut is actually Helmut Bridge. You say his name. I'm not bad at the name. How do you say his name? Helmut Bridge-Cuven.
Mm-hmm.
He was my neurologist at Box Hill for all those time, and he is amazing. And he's well known around the world because he's very big on the MS world, and he knows my current neuro, who's called Dr. Mental brain. It's there.
Even I've forgotten.
Broadley. Yeah, my Dr. Broadley. Yes, Dr. Broadley. And
I know that because I was listening to your podcast. It's not that I'm creepy.
Okay. You're not stalking me. No, Dr. Broadley's great too. So Professor Broadley, and yeah, I guess Howard's professor too. I guess the professors. I think they know each other. I'm sure they would. The MS world's quite narrow, I'm guessing, so they know each other through work as well. And I think they're the same. I think the project called the Octopus program. I think that's Broadley's doing that program. I'm pretty sure Helmut's on it too. Is he?
Yep, it is. He is. Yep.
Good to know. It's got and that's kind of exciting because it's actually I'm all excited about the remodelization as a goal, an aim and a goal. It's exciting to me because people like me who are progressive, we don't get better, but until things come on that make us better. So my dream is to improve one day, but that's that's way down the line, but it'll happen, I think.
Do you mind if I jump in for a quick question for you, Jodie? So could you tell us a bit about your nursing journey? How did you get into nursing, and then how did you get into the kind of MS side of nursing? Because Claire said you're the best nurse she's ever had, I feel like your story is important to hear.
Yes, you are.
That's lovely, Claire. So I really Mum and Dad just thought that nursing was a good idea, so I became a nurse. There's no glam story in my deep needing compassion to care for people. Mum and Dad just said, "Why don't you?" And I said, "All right then." And then I did uni, spent more time at the movies than at uni with my girlfriend, so I was not even overly committed then. But then I got a job at Monash and went and started in neurosurgery. And I think then I kind of just did some. I really loved like neurology and neurosurgery, and I think the brain is extraordinarily fascinating all the time. So you've got the arts, the science, the humanity, all of those things all come together, and MS throws in a bit of immunology as well too, which I never stop learning ever. And there's always something new that I don't really get and want to understand more of. So I love that part of it because I love learning, and not so much at uni. Maybe I like learning more about what was on Days of Our Lives then.
Okay.
And then I met, I was doing stroke nursing and they needed a nurse to help at the MS clinic. And I met Helmut, who denies that he wore long socks and sandals, but he actually did. And I met him and we just clicked straight away, I think. Like, just both of us were very driven to improve the lives of people with MS in any way that we can. And he was such an early adopter into different treatments and different, and I loved that too. And so we both just built the service together based on that really common value of what are we doing that's right for people, and incredibly, like Helmut just was so driven by doing that, by wanting to make it, make people's lives with MS better. So as soon as a new treatment came along, we would implement it and research and all of those things. So it was just such a it was such an exciting time in MS. Like, MS is never exciting, so you sort of feel bad saying that word, but it was there was so much improvements going on so quickly and so fast that, Australia led the way quite quickly, and Helmut was really a big part of doing that, like with other neurologists as well too. So that, and then I decided I wanted to be a nurse practitioner. And so that took quite a few years to get that done for the hospital to support that position, but eventually it did. And so I was never intentional about being an MS nurse, but once I got there, I loved working with people who were my age and who had shared my experiences. So, Claire I don't think I had my boys when I met you, Claire. Yeah. Maybe I did. Maybe they were really little, but I've got two boys.
Two little boys, I think, little boys.
Yeah. So mine are older now, like yours are older. Yeah. So people who were, well, I'm 54, and I heard in the podcast Claire's 54. So we're on the same pathways, in the same journeys, and even people who are a little bit older. MS is predominantly women, and I'm really passionate now about women's health as well too, and how menopause impacts people, and so I've shifted with lots of different areas of interest, when I had children. And so it was lovely to share those journeys with people, and to be lots of nursing is older people, but MS was all young people. So it was very, it was good. So, yeah.
Wow, it sounds like your mum and dad really knew what they were saying when they told you to go to uni and be a nurse.
Yeah.
I think they were just trying to get me out the door.
Glad that you did. I'm very glad you became a nurse. It helped us a lot. Thank you for that too. Because I think Lena knew you too. So, Lena, my friend. Lena's brother. Lena knew and I met you as well at Boxall Hospital. So she's been very instrumental in my life a lot too, which is great. Lena's been on the podcast twice now. She's my friend too. So she's very relevant to the MS bill as well, which is great.
Yeah. So it was a good time.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing to say, good time in MS, but it's actually become a lot better over years, a lot more. The research done in the last 20 years has been quite informative, I can't say the word, useful for getting better, or not getting worse. So I'm glad for that work. So the research that you and Helmut have done has helped people like me stay level and not get worse. So it's been good work done, so thank you.
And Claire, I have a question for you, because you've spoken so highly about your experience with Helmut and then with Jodie, of course, as your nurse. Can you kind of explain to us how much of an impact and difference it makes having a nurse that you really love and feel like you really gets it, maybe in comparison to not, or?
Well, actually, that's a good point. I go back to my history of MS history. So in England, I had obviously got an MS in England, and I had tumours back then. You were not very good back then. They were, for me at least, they were quite hard to bear. They were like, the drug couldn't interfere on all the interferons, very, very a lot of side effects. It wasn't a very good drug for me at least. Not everyone, but for me it wasn't very good. But also the treatment I got in England was different. And when I arrived here, when I was sick here, the treatment I got here was so much better. I'll be very frank. The treatment I had here was much better and less damaging, and I had more support because MS nurse like you. So I think in Melbourne I had a good MS sort of group around me to feel like my MS. What do you call MS? My brain is not very good today. You need a core group of help around you. I didn't have that in England. Now I do here, or did in Melbourne, and now it's quite. I think having someone to support you in your battle with MS. If you're on your own, how can you get worse? I believe. And I think if you've got someone supporting you, like an MS group or a supportive group around you, you feel more taken care of. You feel you're better to fight this disease better. If you're on your own, it's actually hard work, I believe. But what do you think about that, Jodie? Do you think people do better as in groups?
Yeah, I think we've still got a lot to do in MS care, and I think a lot of it is around that. Building up the people. The medical team is really important, but it's great to have people there who can help you navigate your way to different. That was a huge part of my role, education, but also go here, do this, go there. Look, just having that sort of that knowledge to help people navigate around resources. But I guess as I've come along in my career, what I've realised is the importance of people around you. And Claire, you did your best when you came to the love and the family around you and finding your new relationship, and they matter so much, and I don't think that we spend enough time trying to support people in how to make the most of that group around you, because they're the people who are with you every day. They're the people who are there, who are supporting you, and they're the ones who are doing the 1,000 little things. They're the ones who are knowing the 1,000 little things of MS. We don't as clinicians, we don't see that as much, but do appreciate the value of that. And I think also you mentioned your connection with Lena, finding someone who sort of you can connect with. It doesn't necessarily have to be a large peer group, but it can just be one or two people who they're on the same. They get you, like they just get you, and you just have someone who gets you. And that's not me, and that's not Helmut. We've got our jobs to do, very important jobs. But I think that part of it is where we need to work more on the trauma of diagnosis. I don't think we do a lot or recognise, I didn't when I was younger, just how that it's a trauma in itself, getting that diagnosis, whether you do well with the treatment, which most people do, which is ACE, but it's still having to deal with that trauma in your life and the financial impact, all those broader impacts. The ripples are just huge with that one moment in your life where you say, now you've got MS. And it doesn't matter if it's mild, moderate or severe. Anyway, it does. I mean, it does matter to a degree, but the impact is still significant. And I think there's still lots of work to do, still lots of research to do on remyelination. But my interest much more is how I can help people, or my interest lies in how we can help people get all those bits lined up around them, get the people and the resources and get the finances okay, and get all of those things sorted.
Because then the patient can start focus on getting better. So I think when at the beginning, when you're first diagnosed, you're so lost and you're so overwhelmed with all the changes in your life that I think I believe your health can get worse fast. And I think that because you're not actually mentally ready to fight it. When you've got everything in order, or your team around you in order, in your brain, you feel sort of you've got like a fighting team with you. You can actually fight the disease more. Not fight, but fight the disease. When you're basically just take me, I'm yours now, disease, take over, and you get worse fast. Not everyone. I believe that when people are first diagnosed, they get worse faster because they're so overwhelmed. It's just so huge. So when you're in a better space, when you get older and you've had it for longer, I think you're stronger, you're in a better place to fight it and be okay with it. Well, not okay, be better with it, I guess. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Can we ask as well, Jodie, because you mentioned it earlier, kind of about like the misdiagnosis for a lot of people in the first few years when they have MS. We've spoken to a lot of different people on the podcast, and that seems to be the most common occurrence in people, that they're not diagnosed for years. Can you give us, I'm sure you've got lots of information or insight on to why that is, and
what to do?
I think it's changing. It's definitely changing that people are getting diagnosed faster than in days gone by. There is a bit of a dependence on where you are, what you know, who you know, and what you know. But that's getting less and less. I think over my years, I'm part of a global organisation called Brain Health, and they have set standards for what people should expect from care and times to diagnosis, and it's all about promoting early diagnosis, better understanding amongst GPs. But I think the challenge is that the symptoms can be so weird, like you've got a little bit of vision problem, and then they go away. So you kind of, it's so easy not to do something when the symptom goes away. Like if it stays, you think, I really have to do something about this. But in MS, they often come and go. And so I think that's probably why people just go, oh, well, I had a numb toe, but I just ignored it. It got better. It got better after a few weeks. And so I think that's an issue as well. It's not necessarily, there's a little bit of medical gaslighting. There's a little bit of problems with people not recognising problems because they're women in their younger years. But overall, like I think that's getting less and less, fortunately. It still happens, unfortunately, but I think it's getting less. And that problem. I mean, I remember listening to your podcast, Claire, because I'd forgotten your story about how you had those symptoms that came and went too. And you, when you've got little kids and you're working and you've got a career, you just go, oh, I just haven't got time. It's gone away. Thank goodness. That's that.
You just pray it goes away and it goes away. I'm okay now. Good for me. Off I go, live my life again. And then again, you think later, and getting it smash you in the face next time. Oh, it's bigger now. Oh, oops. Should have paid more attention before.
That's actually really interesting. I feel like kind of pinpointing it to that, the symptoms come and go, because everyone we speak to, we're like, why is that the case? But I think you're right, especially as women, you kind of just like carry on with it, you go, all right.
We just deal with things all the time.
Yeah.
We just do.
And now
you have to.
Now your main focus is in women's health, you said, Jodie. So what does that look like, the work that you're doing at the moment?
I always feel bad that I don't concentrate on men, but they are...
They've had enough for enough amount of time.
Yeah, I agree.
They'll be right.
I do feel bad for them because men get MS as well too. And they're the same group. In fact, some of them are even worse at ignoring as there's something going wrong with them. So they're in the same group of that same thing going away. But women's health there's so many issues in women's health that impact women with MS. And one of those has been pregnancy. And, there's such a long time where women didn't have children because of MS, or they didn't have, or they stopped their medications. And even now, I mean, Claire would have probably stopped her medications, but now that's changed so much now that people are breastfeeding whilst they're on certain medications. They're able to get pregnant and stay on medications because the hormone fluctuations of pregnancy really dramatically impact MS. So there's been so much change and so much work in looking at that. And I think now there's just emerging work being done on the impact of menopause and ageing, but particularly the fluctuations in menopause, because menopause symptoms really mimic MS, but also, you think of what happens in menopause, you're too young, but when it does, you get the cognition, you get a brain fog that's particular to MS, hot flushes, all those things just have such a significant impact on the day-to-day life of women with MS as well too, and often was sort of swept aside as just MS. My thinking's getting worse, but it's just MS. We're actually, slap on and have a bit of estrogen and you can really feel better.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But I think that the idea that I was actually getting worse before the boys, I didn't know that. I forgot that, but I think that it was kind of.
Let's definitely talk about the pregnancy because that was.
Because pregnancy, the thing about pregnancy, Jodie, we've talked about this with people on the podcast already, that when you're pregnant, the MS goes away. Which I love that part. So at one stage I had kept her babies forever, then I would have stayed healthy forever, but you can't do that. But I think that I'm confused. I'm aware that there should be a study done on pregnancy and how it makes MS stop. Do you know anything about that?
I think they are doing it. There is research ongoing about the hormonal changes and their impact. Because as soon as you're not pregnant, it's a very common story that people feel so much better when they're pregnant, and would like to bottle pregnancy. But there is lots of work to do with pregnancy and the hormones. There is research that they're doing. I'm not particularly familiar with any studies, but I know that there are studies going on globally about that.
Because you kind of think like, Claire felt, I'm not very sciencey, but like, riddle me this.
You are.
Claire felt so good when she was pregnant.
I felt great.
Like, would there be something that you can do where like you can manipulate the hormones in your body to make it, like, because I know the pill is similarly like that to make your body feel like it's pregnant, like, or for Claire, was it kind of like you felt so good when you were pregnant, but then your MS came back quite worse afterwards?
Yes,
is that
definitely.
quite common as well?
Must be.
Really common. And actually lots of arthritis gets a whole lot better when you're pregnant. A lot of inflammatory diseases get better when you're pregnant. There's a reduced inflammation element to it, that all those diseases get better during pregnancy. So it's not just MS that does that. But in MS, it's particularly problematic that it flares up hugely, and people commonly have relapses after babies, commonly. Yeah, but not anymore, not so much anymore, because we start treatment back really quickly now.
Wow.
And that's changed so much, because there used to be sort of, as I said, some of the treatments are safer during breastfeeding. Some women choose not to breastfeed because they know that risk of relapse is quite significant after pregnancy. So everybody's different, but there's definitely a trend and a concern in that. There's a vulnerability in that time for getting worse. And I think the mysteries of pregnancies are a lot to unpick. It would be lovely if we could, but there's a lot to unpick about what it is about the pregnancy that reduces the disease activity and also makes you feel so. People with MS, like, all my fatigue went, which is just amazing, really.
It does. You feel like $100 or $1 million, $1,000, all those things. You just feel great. I think I just kept doing that, but it didn't happen. But then anyway, that happens.
And then your experience with menopause, maybe we could talk about like experiences, because you're kind of focusing on menopause with MS and menopause, because I know your experience, like, it wasn't
nothing.
Yeah, you didn't feel much.
I didn't get menopause. Just happened overnight. Nothing. I had no issues at all. So that's just lucky. It's just people everyone had different hormone systems. My system, my mother too, had our people from being baby making to being menopause, nothing happened, no change at all. So it's just luck.
It's the same as the rest of the population. Some women are lucky, and some women suffer significantly. Not even every woman who's pregnant feels great with MS. Some people it doesn't make any difference. So there's the same as with menopause. Some people are just lucky, and other people not so lucky.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I say one thing I want to say right now? Is that in terms of the baby, having children and being with pregnancy and MS, is that I think when I first had MS, I was told I couldn't have babies at all. It was in England, of course, and I couldn't have babies until I was finished having babies. Then I was healthier. I could start having babies then, but I never. Long story, but I got better and had babies. But I think that when I had babies, I couldn't breastfeed. I couldn't. I couldn't breastfeed till I finished the drugs as well, so I couldn't breastfeed either. So all these things. My point is that it's nice now that for girls who have babies now, it's great because they can have babies and still take MS drugs, which is good, and also they can breastfeed. So in the last 20 years, it's changed so much now. So I'm glad it's got better for everyone now, because for me it wasn't that case at all. I had to do IVF for that reason, and then couldn't breastfeed. So actually a lot of things we've come forward in leaps and bounds and got better Actually, I'm very tired today because my speech is really bad today. Just don't you know that my speech is particularly bad today, and my brain's particularly fuzzy today, so I'm really tired. So just wanted to mention that just then.
You're doing a really great job, but it's good to share. So, Jodie, we'd like to ask you how being a nurse and working with different people who have really sad stories every day. How do you cope with that, and without taking it on? How do you do your job so well and be there for people with your heart, but come home and not feel it in your heart, if that makes sense?
I hope I do my job well most days, because I have bad days too. Like everyone, we have bad days. But I think I've always thought that one of my jobs was to be hopeful. That as a nurse, that was just so important to me, and so hope was just so important. You could see it, people who had hope, and Helmut had that too. Like Helmut was really always eternally hopeful. But I think I used to say that to myself a lot, that was my job, to be hopeful. Like in terms of there was always something I could do, and some way I could make that person's life better. I also have an amazing family. So that's a pretty rock solid background to come from. And and there were days when I did. I did sit in the toilet and have a cry, and I did sit and do those things. Not often though, because I am naturally, and I'm naturally optimistic. Like I always think it can get better, And I think you were just saying then, Claire, your speech was so bad, and I thought your speech was much worse on days 15 years ago.
Wow,
really?
yeah,
That's good to hear that, actually, because I think that, in fact, you knew me so long ago that you knew my how I was back then. It's that it's good to hear that actually my speech is worse back then than it is now. So those days I was in a bad, as my MS is pronounced back then. So it's good to hear that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, do you have any other stories from your time with Claire? I'm not sure any off the top of your head that you'd like to share, because this is really, as a friend of Claire's, like this is quite interesting, because I feel like some days can be really, really hard, and like it's nice to hear little things like back then, wow, you had so much courage, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because she's so, like it didn't just happen overnight that you've always been like that, or about the speech thing. Like it's just, I think it's a nice reminder for you to hear as well, Claire.
It's nice to hear it. Thank you.
How about your relationship with your dad, Claire? But I do know he contacted me a lot, and he would ring me to say Claire's in trouble and really needs some help and support. I had quite a few conversations, not about you, more him ringing me out of concern to say, I'm really worried about Claire. Sometimes he got even, if I remember correctly, you remember things in a certain way, but sometimes he was even quite bossy. I thought that's where Claire gets it from. But
wow, okay.
He really had your back from my perspective. Like he would ring my phone himself and say, I don't know what I'm going to do. What can I do here? So I remember a couple of conversations with your dad when things were really, really, like tough. There was a time when things were really tough with the kids, and I remember having some conversations with him as well too. So I don't know what your relationship was like with your dad, or whether the movie was real in terms of that, but I do remember that distinctly. And yeah, I wouldn't, if I had to ask me now if your speech has got worse, I'd say probably not much. Like I think you had days when it was really bad then as well too, and I would sit there and think, concentrate really hard to listen, to make sure that I was to make sure that I was getting everything that you said.
So I think that these sorts of things are good to hear from me right now, because I can't remember those days. So I'm glad I'm not saying this now. So I think that those days I was so lost that I think I just was so sick that I didn't remember this at all, that you say my speech was okay then.
And I've never had a day with Claire that I've had to listen. Like we've known each other for like 6 or 7 years now. I've never had a day where I couldn't understand you, And
yet, so Jodie, you're saying now those days back then you couldn't?
Yeah.
So that must
There were days, and yes, you were. Yeah, no wonder you don't remember. There was so much trauma around, and you were so unwell. But you got better, which was really good. But in that there was really a time when You came home from my memory, came home from a bit, and then there was a bit of a crash period could have been Bobby even a couple of years. Were you living with your parents? Were you living with your dad?
In Melbourne, no. No, I was living in Kew.
No, I don't think so. I think he just would come and visit, and anyway, that's my memory of it.
Wow, it's good. Thank you. Remember that too, because that's good. I think I blanked it out. It was awful. I blanked all the things out of my brain.
It was awful. It was just awful.
Yeah, it got worse and worse and worse. I was like, and then I had the cancer after that. It's just like it just got worse and worse. It's a really horrible time. So I think I'm just trying to save myself by not thinking about it much. But it was there. Yeah. It was there. But I think it was a hard time. But here we are. I get better. You were saying before about hope being part of your mantras, being hope and everything. I think that one of my stories about the whole film we wrote, or the film we made, is that one of the things I wanted to promote was that there's like early diagnosis is important, but also there's education about MS. So the first thing was awareness, education, and hope. My third thing was hope. So the hope thing about MS is that you were saying before that when you first diagnosed it's so traumatic and that's such a trauma when you first diagnosed. So I want people to understand that you're not going to die. You're going to be okay. And people I think John and I went around Australia talking to various people in different forums about MS diagnosis. And I think people need to know that you won't die. You're going to be okay. Everyone just needs to just take the drugs if you want to, of course, if you choose to, and just your life's going to be okay. It'll be harder. It's a challenge. It may be more difficult here and there, but you'll be okay. So I want people to know that, because I think that the thought outside the world now is that MS is, it's just the worst thing ever, but it's not. There's worse things out there.
Yeah, and hope is kind of a muscle that you need to flex. I remember hearing someone say optimism is a trait, and hope is a. Now I can't remember what that saying was. See, same thing.
I'm glad. It's good. Optimism is a trait. Like optimism is a trait.
Everyone can have hope.
Yeah, hope is
hope is an intentional thing. Like you have to kind of tell yourself to do it, and you have to put effort into it to be hopeful. And so I think I had to tell myself to be that way. Like I had to tell myself to be hope. I'm pretty naturally anyway, but I think that was probably really important as well too. That I just that I made an effort and keep making an effort to be hopeful for people, and hopeful not just in a big broad cure and life's going to be okay, but hopeful that tomorrow's going to be a better day. It's just as important, hope. Hopeful that tomorrow's going to be a better day. Hopeful that it doesn't have to be little. It doesn't have to be big hope. It can just be little hope too.
And little changes here and there.
And for someone who's sick, you're like the health professional, they're sitting next to you, and if you're having hope, they're going, that would make someone, personally, for me, if it was a nurse, you go, she knows, she sees people every day, maybe it will be okay.
It'll be okay, yeah. It's quite powerful.
That's super powerful.
Could fix things. It can actually make people feel less down, less depressed.
Yeah.
Hope is contagious too. So it's a good thing to do, I believe.
I think that's our time. You were awesome, Jodie.
Well, it's been great. Thank you. We're going to go and do other things. Thank you for your help today, Jodie. It's been so great to hear from you too. I'm glad you're well and that you're smiling. You're always smiling well, which is so nice.
It's been so lovely to reconnect with you, Claire, because I really did. I remembered how I felt so strongly when I met you, and just thought that you were amazing. So and you have continued to be amazing. Don't forget that.
So kind, I'm blushing. Thank you, Jodie. It's so nice.
It's lovely.
And and you saw the movie, and like the movie I heard as well. The movie was
I hope you're still holding yourself gracefully in your skinny jeans as well.
Right now,
she's still hot as hell.
Thank you, darling. It's very kind. Thank you, Jodie. It's so kind talking to you too. I enjoyed it a lot.